Welcome to our exclusive interview with people across the globe. Today we sit with a presidential candidate all the way from Tunisia. Now, Tunisia is one of the countries that is going to the polls this year in what analysts predict as a high-stakes election, attracting a lot of opposition because 14 candidates have been disqualified as at Saturday from the presidential election because according to the highest electoral body, they failed to secure the electorate's endorsement. Is that truly a reflection on the ground? One of such candidates joins me here in the studio. She's Olfa Hamdi. She has a burning desire to lead her country, Tunisia. She was a presidential candidate for the Third Republic Party of Tunisia, but the political setup in that country changed the rules. Now, to be president in Tunisia, you have to be at least 40 years old and above. On Saturday, Tunisia's Electoral Commission said it had preliminarily accepted only 3 presidential candidates, including the incumbent Kais Saied, amid widespread criticism of what the opposition says are moves to exclude serious contenders. Now, the commission said it had accepted the candidacies of Saied and Zuhair Magzau, who is seen as close to Saied, who is the current president of Tunisia, and then Ayachi Zamil for the October 6 elections, while rejecting 14 others, like I mentioned. This news is not too good. It's depressing for Olfa. But has she given up? What will be her story? We know shortly. Olfa, welcome to our studios.
Thank you so much.
And welcome to Ghana.
Thank you, thank you.
How's Ghana?
It is my honor and pleasure to be here. The best part about Ghana is its people.
Of course. We're very hospitable. We're a beacon of democracy.
Yes.
Which was once the name for your country. Yeah.
And Ghana is an inspiration to the entire African continent and to Tunisia specifically because, you know, and I think Ghana's democracy is way underrated globally. I think if people would know that this country has had elections where incumbents get unseated through elections and through the ballot, where presidents respect the constitution and do not amend constitutions to extend their terms. You know, Ghana is an example and is a leader because it's not even about, for me, the way I see it, it's not about a fragile democracy that, like in Tunisia, we're still struggling to save it and to sustain it and sustain its institutions. Ghana has proven and has resisted the test of time when it comes to its democracy. And that is inspiring. And as a Tunisian politician, I look for that mentorship from the example of Ghana. And I will call and I will share this example with Tunisians because, you know, in Tunisia we might think, and a lot of people, even in Africa, they think democracy is Western made and therefore it's not fit for us or the process is not fit for us. But the example of Ghana gives us the proof that democracy is African and it's African made. Right. And that is such an inspiration. And for me, it gives me hope. Takeaway. Yeah, that's my takeaway. And it gives me hope to fight even for. It gave me oxygen to come to Ghana.
I love that.
And keep fighting.
Let's talk about you, your childhood days. Who were you as Olfa as a child?
Oh, what a question. I was a very good student, always the first or second in my class. When I'm second, I started crying at the time. You know, very shy as a kid, but very curious. I'm the curious type of person. And I think, you know, with time you go through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of challenges, a lot of hardships. I actually left Tunisia when I was 17 to go and study abroad. So I've had this wide range international experience, went back to Tunisia, served in our military and worked in our military, worked in multiple sectors. And so I would say I'm a citizen of the world, but at the same time, my heart is Tunisian. And what I've seen in many parts of the world, I want Tunisia and Tunisians to live it. And that's the best of what this world can offer.
Talking about love for Tunisia, on Saturday, the highest electoral body for your country announced that only 3 candidates are eligible to contest in these elections. 14 of you have been disqualified. How did the news come to you, and how, going forward, how do you want to address the situation?
All right, so, you know, to put it in simple terms, I worry about my country.
Why?
Because when you have an election that actually happens outside of the constitution and outside of the law, so we're talking about a rogue election, in a country where the opposition is not represented now in the ballot and on the list of the candidates, the opposition is not represented. With that, that's a recipe for instability, not just because of the election or the political crisis, but it's also combined with the geopolitical crisis that we're going through as Tunisia being at the center of the Arab world, the East and the West, the north of the Mediterranean, the south of the Mediterranean. We're also in the center of a social, economic, and environmental crisis in Tunisia. So the conditions for instability are gathering in a sort of a perfect storm. And I can see the storm coming from a little bit far away. And so that happened in 2011 when we had an uprising, which led to the Arab Spring. And what happened in Tunisia at the time had a ripple effect across the region. And so we're surrounded also by countries and governments and institutions that are also worried about Tunisia becoming a source of instability to the region as well. And so I worry as we are going through this milestone of the presidential election, which should be, you know, democracy and presidential elections are stabilizing forms because they enable people of the same country, and that's the Tunisians, we the Tunisians. It enables us to compete and to choose a direction for the country in a peaceful way. And if we're prevented from doing that, if the presidential election, as it is happening right now, which is outside of the law, happening outside of the constitution, and I can explain more about that, that deprives the Tunisian people of the ownership of the tool, the peaceful tool that enables them to switch direction, to change, to vote for alternatives that they wish to vote for. And so I am quite worried about my country.
You say you see a storm coming.
Yes, yes.
Does that storm include dictatorship? I have had critics and some analysts say that your current president, Said, is taking Tunisia back to the days of dictatorship prior to the revolution.
Yes.
Is that what you foresee?
What I can tell you is that Tunisians will never go back to a dictatorship. And so if dictatorship is served on the menu of this election, Tunisians are not going to choose it. And if the alternative is outside of the ballot, then what are we expecting? A deepening crisis. I'll give you an example. You know, this electoral committee, our constitution, which our president, who is a legal scholar, wrote, and we trusted him to write it, stipulates clearly that the electoral committee must be impartial and independent. The current electoral committee has been appointed by one of the candidates. So by design, it is
Which candidates?
Him,
the president. Okay.
So by design, it is unconstitutional. Our law, the law that enabled the president to govern the country after he dissolved parliament and annulled the constitution, which is Executive Order 117, has expired. This electoral committee was appointed using that executive order, which has expired, which means that this electoral committee, per its legal appointment, has expired.
Okay.
And so we're looking at an election happening outside of the constitution and outside of the law. In a country where we elected this president in 2019, a president that is elected through the ballot box can go outside with the ballot box, not outside of the ballot box. And so I am really worried about this. I worry about the crisis deepening. And I know, I always keep the faith that we'll find a way out of this. But my wish, and that's what I play as a leader of the opposition, is that I call for that transformation and the coming out of the crisis with the least cost possible to the Tunisian people.
One of the criteria that the Electoral Committee or the Electoral Commission said that the 14 candidates failed to meet was citizens' endorsement.
Yes.
Did you receive citizens' endorsement?
So the electoral committee lost its credibility in actually making any statement. So this electoral committee is an electoral committee that actually lied about the law, lied about requirements for candidates, mismanaged the whole election. And so, with all due respect to everybody, this electoral committee is not in a position to actually be the one verifying. This team is not in the position to be the one verifying citizen endorsements to any of the candidates.
The new rule says you can only be 40 to contest.
Yes.
You're 37.
So this rule is against the electoral law, which is the law of the land right now, which says the age limit is 35. And that age limit, 35, that was an asset we got through the revolution in 2011. Because the country is a majority youth, 52% of the electoral base is under the age of 39.
Okay.
The youth of Tunisia were the ones who took the streets to unseat the dictator that we had in 2011.
Yeah.
And so it was an asset for the revolution, for the youth to be, for the age limit to become 35. And that's the law of the land, which was passed through parliament and is active right now. Now, changing the law and changing the age limit has to happen through a new amendment that can happen through parliament. You cannot, as an electoral committee, which is the case right now, write a decision, an ordinance, which is not a legislative decision. And so by doing that, what this electoral committee did, it disrespected the parliament, the Tunisian parliament, which is an elected parliament that is in session and that is happening right now. And it actually broke the very same constitution that they're claiming they're respecting, which the constitution clearly mandates that the electoral law is an organic law and can only be modified through parliament. And so there is no way, we cannot have electoral committees that are also becoming legislative committees in a country where the rule of law and a country of institution, that is Tunisia. And so that's why I was saying that the root cause and the deep root cause that's leading to this crisis and this entire conflict, which I was eliminated on the basis of age limit. Other candidates are in jail because the electoral committee sued them for criticizing them. We have a candidate, another woman, who's a leader of a party as well, who is now sentenced to 2 years in jail because the electoral committee sued her for criticizing the electoral committee. So we are in a position right now where this electoral committee is not only unconstitutional, illegal, is actually waging war against the opposition and is expecting us to believe what they say. We don't believe anything of what they say. And that is one of the crises and the factors that I worry will take Tunisia to instability. And that's why we have, and this is what I called for, and I will call for this. And actually, this would be one of my first interviews after the announcement. And so my goal is that we call for this election to be postponed until we can resolve the situation associated with the conditions and with the electoral committee.
So if the election is not postponed, what will you do? Will you seek legal redress?
Look, I do not make predictions about the future. That's not what I do. I always handle the situation that I have in front of me. The situation that I have in front of me, which I always trust. I trust in Tunisia's institutions, from our military to our interior to our judicial system. We filed a lawsuit with the administrative court. I trust also the international community in siding with international law. The Vienna Convention is very clear. People who represent governments must be duly representative of governments, and an election happening in this condition cannot give a legitimate representation to the people, no matter the results of it. And so we will work on that. We will work on a key element, which is try to bring Tunisians together, including the president, because we have to have a national reconciliation in Tunisia. We reached a political crisis that is so deep that it is threatening our national unity. We reached a political crisis that is so deep that it is threatening our national unity. And so it is critical that in the next few weeks, independently of the election, that we find a way for reconciliation and we find a way for even our president, when he gets unseated through an election, he can still be in country and stay in dignity.
Three of the things that formed the basis for the revolution was employment, freedom, dignity.
Yes.
What is the current state of employment in Tunisia?
Well, we're averaging 0.3% GDP growth, so the country is in an economic recession, if not depression. The unemployment among 80% of youth do not have money in their pockets. Unemployment within educated youth with graduate degrees is averaging 50%. So 1 Tunisian out of 2 who graduates from a university cannot find a job. 500,000 Tunisians left Tunisia in the past 3 years. 500,000. We're seeing a mass exodus coming out of Tunisia. And so what's happening is that the slogan of the uprising in 2011, which is freedom, employment, شغل حرية كرامة وطنية in our local language in Arabic. So employment, freedom, dignity.
Yeah.
We didn't solve the employment part of that equation for the past decade and a half. We're going back on the freedom assets we gained, hardly gained and fought for through that through the 2011 uprising. And now we're going to lose our dignity, because when you know that the president that's governing you or whoever is governing you is the minority, you lose your dignity as people. When you know you're run by people you didn't choose, or when you know that your choice has been made for you as people before even going to the ballot box, you lose your dignity. And so we're fighting for that equation. And I would like to just say that the good side of this is that the Tunisian people, and that's why I'm here and that's why I continue to be here, the Tunisian people, despite the hardship, they have shown so much resilience in keeping up and staying loyal to that slogan. And so they're saying, the Tunisian people are saying, we are not going to accept and normalize with a situation that does not provide employment, that means job, wealth, freedom, and dignity. And so we'll find a way to make it.
Let's talk about you
Yes.
and your decision to contest for presidential elections for a 37-year-old. Well, the people say, according to the Electoral Commission, the people have not endorsed you. The system is not accepting you. Why not stay behind, enjoy your life?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, had they been born maybe in another country, I might have chosen a different path. But I was born Tunisian. Tunisia is in my heart. And I'm the kind of woman that look, you have two choices in the world,
Right.
you know, which is choice number one is when you face injustice, you fight it, or you accept
That's
it and
true.
live like a victim. Right? My generation, Tunisian women, you look at the ballot now, the list that was retained, the 3 people. Is there
Yes.
any woman there?
No.
No. Do you know that in the voter intention polls for the presidential election, of the top 5, 2 are women, me and another woman. So it's not just about me. It's about the female leadership of Tunisia and the possibility of having a female that is also a commander-in-chief in Tunisia. It's becoming a reality. Men are voting for that. Men are trusting women. Of the 6 biggest political parties in Tunisia, 3 are led by elected women.
Right.
And so, as a woman, as a Tunisian woman, I'll think about that. You know, as a Tunisian woman, when I'm faced with injustice, I have 2 choices. Either accept the injustice and live as a victim, or fight the injustice. And I chose to fight. And so that's what we're doing. Like all of the Tunisian people who are fighting, and how they're saying, you know, there are many conditions and many factors which are way complex that are coming against the will of the people and the right of Tunisians to their own country and to live their dream and pursue their happiness and pursue their wealth and pursue their opportunity in Tunisia, where they don't have to migrate to Europe. They don't have to cross the sea and put their lives in danger trying to get to the shores of Italy. Tunisians want to have their wealth and their opportunity and pursue their happiness in Tunisia. Now the conditions are actually coming against us doing that. And so what we're doing, we're fighting, and that's why I'm fighting.
Is the system fighting Tunisian women in terms of development?
Well, in terms of development, when you look at, so Tunisia has had, Tunisian women, we have been blessed with a process of emancipation, because the country has been a majority Muslim country. And for the past 60 years, Tunisian women have worked hard, but also benefited from really an advancement of our rights. So one of the key things that happened in Tunisia is equal rights to the access to the job market, the banning of polygamy in Tunisia, which has been ongoing for a long time, mandatory education to girls. I'm a product of the Tunisian public education system, right? I was raised in a country that did not discriminate, the system that did not discriminate, that did not prevent me from my fair chance to access education and opportunity growing up. And so, yes, these are assets that we have gained. These assets and these rights are now threatened by a collapse of the economic system, a collapse of the democratic system, and by a geopolitical context, which, you know, I always say, when you don't have a seat on the table, you're on the menu. So when you don't see women on that list of in the ballot box, that means that our rights are on the table, and they might be sacrificed so that everybody gets a deal done. And so we have to have an inclusive process in which no Tunisian is left behind. No Tunisian is left behind, and that means women, youth, because when you look at the list of 3, you don't see women there represented. You don't see youth represented. Yeah. You don't see actually pro-growth policies represented in there. You don't see free market positions represented in that list, because all left-wing, you know, I'll just say it, you know, from communism to less communist. That's the list we have there. You don't see property rights represented in that ballot list. You don't see renegotiations of our trade agreements with the EU so that we can remove the embargo that we're living in Tunisia, because Tunisia is living an embargo from a set of trade agreements and set of economic agreements which blocked our growth. And so you don't see somebody in there who would negotiate that and who would renegotiate with our trade partners all over. And so the elimination there is an elimination of policies before it being an elimination of me or any other candidate.
What were your policies?
My policy is a pro-economic growth policy. So we have to unlock our GDP growth, because that's what creates jobs in Tunisia. And that's what enables Tunisians to start businesses, to create wealth, to make money in Tunisia. I mean, that's ultimately what we want, you know? And so to unlock growth in Tunisia, we have to break down the binding constraints to growth. And the binding constraints to growth are: our ports are closed in Tunisia. Our trade agreements do not enable investment into any type of manufacturing in Tunisia. You know, I'll share this information with you, and that's a key policy that I'm supported by the Tunisian people to do, and that's why I kept going up in the polls. So Tunisia signed a trade agreement with the EU in 1995. And it was based on this idea that Tunisia would provide lower labor rates for the EU, which would create jobs and attract manufacturing, and then they get an advantage for doing that. What happened is that over the past 2 decades or more, the conditions that created that trade agreement changed. The EU expanded, it incorporated Western European countries who have the same conditions in terms of labor, cheap labor and so on, like Tunisians, and Tunisia ended up given a lot of concessions and not getting any of the investments. And so we ended up living a sort of an embargo, a trade embargo, for a country that is literally the doorway to Africa and the gateway to Europe. And so our growth comes from the fact that our geography is meant for us to become a trade hub, and yet we're blocked by that very same agreement. And so I came to Tunisians and said, look, the previous political forces in the opposition, they made this problem about the relationship between the past colonizer and Tunisia, right? You know, we were colonized by France, and so they made it all about that. And I said, look, guys, we have a solution that is concrete and that works for everybody, right? Okay. Which is, we need to go to the World Trade Organization's court. We have to file a lawsuit showing the damages to our people and the embargo we're living in. And on that basis, we can sit on the very same table and renegotiate with the EU. And we have to distinguish that the EU is composed of 2 types of countries, the previous colonizers and the non-colonizers, right? And they don't have the same approach to things. We can't, you know, as Tunisians, we cannot break with the EU simply because we have a problem with our past colonizer. No, we have to be more rational and more open. And so that's one of the key policies I put on the table, which is lifting the embargo on Tunisia by renegotiating new trade agreements, which enable the influx of foreign investment in Tunisia, but also enables Tunisians to invest in Tunisia. Because now, I don't know if you know this, but do you know that the #1 foreign investor in France are Tunisians?
Oh, I see. I do know that.
So our investment is going there because our country is living an embargo. Do you know that Tunisians right now Tunisia is one of the top, if not the top world producer of olive oil. We have over 100 million olive trees. It's the olive country. In Tunisia, because of this trade agreement, Tunisian investors cannot build bottle olive bottling manufacturing in Tunisia. They go and build factories in the US, in many other countries, and not in Tunisia because the trade agreement doesn't enable it. And so what I'm basically saying is like, we have 12 million people. In the next 5 years, we need 2 million jobs. The only way we can create these 2 million jobs is by bringing economic freedom and free market policies to our country. And the way to do that is we have to renegotiate with our partners so that they can invest in our country, but they let us invest in our own country.
Did these policies sink in the minds of the people? I ask this
Yes.
because was there any poll that suggested that out of the 9 million electorates in your country,
Yes.
over half of them agree with your policies?
Yes. So the Tunisian people are, so Tunisia invested heavily in public education. So Tunisia is a country where you have a population which is highly educated, and you have a population which is very mature. I'll share with you a story to give you an answer to that. And last December, I was in an area called Douz. Douz is the southern area in Tunisia where you have the desert, the beautiful desert. And so I was with friends who visited from Tunisia is a touristic country. So I had American friends who visited, and we went to spend the night in the desert. And so part of the experience, and I hope the Ghanaians and come to Tunisia, please visit Tunisia and see how beautiful the country is. Part of the experience when you go to the south, there is the local people would take you and cook certain type of bread under the sand. So it's a bread cooked by the heat.
I have seen documentaries
by the heat of the sand.
Yeah.
So I was while the gentleman, the local people was cooking the bread under the sand. He knew, of course, I'm from the south, so he called me cousin. So he says, "Cousin, I really hope you win. I really hope you make it. We trust you." I said, why would you do that? He told me, "See here, the south, all of these energy projects, European companies, foreign companies, we understand by now that our country doesn't belong to us economically.
Okay.
And we trust you because you studied abroad, because you worked with the Westerners, you worked with the foreigners from all over the world. We trust that you'll negotiate our share of the pie, our share of the bread." So I shared with you the statement of a person who cooks bread under the sand somewhere in the south of Tunisia, let alone the millions of Tunisians who are graduating from school, from university, let alone the 2 million diaspora Tunisians, because out of the 9 million, 2 million Tunisians live abroad and vote. And they've seen what it takes for a population to create its own wealth. Tunisians leave the country because they dream of having a car. If you have to immigrate out of your country to actually win a car, something is wrong. And so what Tunisians want, the technical details, maybe not all of them follow that.
Okay.
But then what they know that we need to renegotiate with the West. We need to renegotiate with our past colonizers. And we need somebody we trust to do that. And they trust me to do that.
A number of African countries have disagree with you on that score. If you look at a country like Burkina Faso, they want to wean itself of colonial continuation.
Yes.
You believe that we need to side with them?
I believe we need to renegotiate. It's not about, I'll tell you what I believe. Tunisia was colonized by France.
Yes.
After we got our independence, our #1 partner was France. You know why? Because our founding president, founding father of the republic, and who banned the monarchy and announced the republic was Habib Bourguiba. Bourguiba, and he fought for years, and he was in exile for years, and he fought for years against France. When he came back and we got our independence, the first speech he made, and he said, Tunisians, we can't live in the trauma, prisoners of the trauma in our relationship with the past colonizer. Let's make a deal and work with them. And he made a great deal. In that deal, we Tunisians, we women, and as a Tunisian girl, I was educated. Part of that deal, Tunisia became one of the largest touristic countries in North Africa and in Africa. Part of that deal, Tunisians speak French fluently, which is an asset. You pick any Tunisian, they speak at least 3 languages, which is an asset. And so I'm for continuing that. But now, the economic setup of Tunisia, when it comes to its financial energy trade setup is serving multiple people's interests and stakeholders' interests, and we Tunisians, our share is not enough anymore. We want more of our own country. And so it's part of a renegotiation that benefits and bridges the north and the south of the Mediterranean. Okay. And now that the EU is unified, and now that the EU is so diverse and a democracy, because they just had their elections, and the EU is very diverse, you know, and the Europeans are very diverse. And so now that we have that, we can actually expand the partnership. So it's no longer bilateral. We can expand the partnership, and we can open Tunisia to the investment of tens and tens of countries, right? And I hope that inspires the rest of Africa as well, because, look, right now we're heading globally in this position where the East and the West are fighting. It's now quite clear. You know, they're fighting in Ukraine, they're fighting in the Middle East. It's happening everywhere. And even when it comes to the economic opportunity in Africa, the challenge, I mean, when you look at the key challenge that the EU has with Africa is illegal migration, right? And Tunisia is at the gateway of that. The root cause of illegal migration or illegal immigration is the fact that economic growth across the African continent is not matching our demographic growth. Right. We're growing faster as a population than our economies. And so for the, I get it. The EU doesn't want illegal migrants in Europe. Well, I'm fine with that. It's their business. But for us to stop that, it's not to build walls that separate Africa from Europe. It is not to build walls in the Mediterranean. The way to actually do that is to catch up the growth in Africa, the economic growth with the demographic growth. And the best way to do that is for us to not, get, the East and the West to fight here, or is to actually go back to our past colonizers and say, look, we know each other, we have a long history. Let's figure out a new way of working together where our populations and our relationships are not getting into a space of tension, but we're getting into a collaboration that creates wealth here. And, in Tunisia's history, we have... Is
that not the reason for the setting up of the Continental Free Trade Area, for example?
Yes, that's one of the policies, it's one of the policies, but it's also, it's actually intra-African collaboration that has to happen on multiple dimensions.
Okay.
One, security. Our interior ministries, they have to work together. They have to share intelligence. They have to share help, because we have all a vested interest into stabilizing our countries and making Africa a safe land. I dream of the day where somebody can walk through Africa anywhere and never have to worry about their safety, anywhere. So we need that intracontinental security collaboration first, military collaboration as well. Then we need intracontinental collaboration that's political as well, because politics, we can have different ideologies, we can disagree, but you know what? Let's dialogue. Let's have an open forum of dialogue. If I have a crisis in Africa, why is it that we have people outside of the continent interfering? We can actually solve our own problems.
Isn't it because, like you mentioned, they are colonizers, they believe in us. They believe that they can better address our challenges for us.
I think the days where they believe that are gone. I really believe that, because the African population, like the Tunisian, and I'm one of them, look, we're having this conversation right now. No. Do you think a lady like you and me would accept somebody from outside to solve our problems?
Never.
I think you and me, if we differ, we'll find a way to resolve this.
Exactly.
And so those days are gone. Our challenge is dialogue. If we can create as many forums at the local level, regional level, federal level, government level, civil society level, let's get our NGOs to work together. Let's fund our NGOs all over Africa. Let's get our media to work together. Let's build our networks. Let's get our transportation and our airports to work together. One of my key visions when I was CEO of the national airline, and it was something really part of the business plan, is to actually create an intracontinental network for airlines. And I started at the time talking to Ethiopian Airlines actually about it. Started having the conversation, having an intracontinental network so that we can serve the airports and the cities that internationals would not serve because it's not worth the cost for them. But us connecting our airports all over Africa and making free transportation or easy transportation available for us and providing African commercial products for airlines, for trains, for good transport, for all of these transports. Look at how much potential that will unlock. And so I'm a believer in the unity of Africa is not about us becoming one entity. No.
So you don't believe in that?
It's not about one entity. It's about actually creating a web of connections.
Okay.
It's a web where from anywhere you can get anywhere. Anywhere
Interconnectivity.
Interconnectivity of intelligence, security, internet, people, NGOs, media, governments, political parties, militaries, interconnectivity, so that we can speak with each other. So I would call it interoperability. Let's get interoperability across the African continent. And then even investment, we'll see an influx, a huge influx of investment from abroad, from America, from Europe. Look, these countries are capitalists. They'll go where the money is. Let's make Africa a place for investment.
But Olfa, you know that in the spirit of capitalism,
yes,
they never give goodies for free.
Yes, yes. And I'm not asking them to give goodies for free. I'm just saying, we Africans, let's create an environment where the return on investment in Africa is high, and there are guarantees where their assets and their money is not expropriated. You know, one of the key risks, this is part of my professional job outside of politics, I do assess capital project risks.
Okay.
So I can tell you, if you're putting $1 billion in some capital project in energy or so, I can tell you what are the risks associated with your project. You know, one of the key risks, which I worry about in Tunisia right now, in many countries in Africa, is the risks of expropriation. That means you wake up one day, you build this refinery, and when you wake up one day, somebody, the ruler or whoever is in government, sends the military and closes the refinery and say, it's mine. As an investor, what do? I can't put the refinery in my luggage and fly with it. It's there.
It is for the people.
And so they need guarantees. So the guarantees come from the institutions and the rule of law. That's what guarantees come from. When I come in and invest, I'm not investing because I know the president or I know the leader of whatever. I'm investing because I know this country has institutions. And if this political switch happens, if that person goes away, dies, whatever happens, my investment is secure.
Don't you also think it's because we don't have strong institutions? Because a number of these investors coming, and all they do is capital flight.
Yes.
They take away the money and they take it back to their home countries. And it leaves us as Africans suffering.
Yes. So, you know that the reason we also suffer is because in Tunisia, I'll share with you in Tunisia, over 50% of the population works in the informal economy.
Okay.
You know what the informal economy is? People not paying taxes.
Yeah.
And so look at how much money we're wasting because we're not collecting taxes of our own people.
Direct taxes.
Our own people create money. You know, like if you take that small, that small fruit cart seller, he's a businessman. It's a micro business. He's a businessman. And he can make today, he's selling, a cart of fruit a day. You know, that person could become one of the largest one day, one of the largest fruit traders in the region. But I am not giving him the acknowledgement that potential from that fruit seller could be way bigger than what he's doing right now. There is no economic elevator. We don't have an economic elevator.
That's true.
So he's not paying taxes as small, and he won't pay taxes when he becomes big. And so what we need is our systems to become free. What that means, our economic systems to become free. So we need and that's my proposal to Tunisians. I said our government controls sectors and under regulation, they control. So it's all license-based. If you wanna, let's say, if you wanna import banana in Tunisia, you need the license from the government.
Yes.
That license is given in a sense of, where there's corruption that comes with that and conflict of interest. And if you're a new person who, let's say I visited Ghana, I found out that bananas are cheaper here from wherever we're importing them. So I want to bring them to Tunisia because, hey, I'll sell them cheaper. I can't do that now in Tunisia because I need the government to authorize that. And not authorize it on the basis of regulation, that's the law. No, authorizes on the basis of a permit. And so what that did, that locked trade, that locked opportunity, that locked entrepreneurship. And I'm just using the case of importing fruit, but this is everywhere, in IT, in construction, in digital, in services, in healthcare, in education, it's everywhere. And so you have a potential Tunisia is, you know, a $50 billion GDP country. It's a country that could be literally, without its geography, at 500. It could be multiplied. But that potential can't grow. That potential can't grow because we locked all of the areas, right? And so what I'm calling for is smaller government.
Okay.
Free
Smaller governments across the continent?
Across Tunisia. I can talk about Tunisia. Okay. I'm not in a position to actually speak about other countries.
Other countries, of course. But I'd like to find out from you, what do you think is a critical concern when it comes to development in Africa?
In Africa, all right.
Do we have greedy leaders like other analysts have said?
About which part? What did the analyst said?
They say we have greedy leaders.
Greedy leaders? All humans are greedy. Greed is a feature that is not African. I mean, look, Europe went through that as well. I mean, they went through, you know, if you don't have institutions and you don't have checks and balances, anybody in power could turn greedy or could turn corrupt or could be a good person. Why is it that we would put our faith into how good a person is? You know, I don't want Tunisians to vote for me because I'm good. I want them to vote for me because they have interest in what I'm going to do. But then they also know that there is nothing, that there are checks and balances on me if I want to go somewhere else. See what I mean?
So functioning institutions.
Functioning institutions and checks and balances and the rule of law. You know, if some are greedy, yeah, they can be greedy. I mean, Europe had greedy leaders. America had greedy leaders. You know, Asia has greedy leaders. Greed is a human trait, you know.
Anyway, let's talk about what the future holds for you.
The problem is when they're greedy and they start stealing, then nobody else is actually checking them. That's my problem.
Yeah. For you.
And for that, we need independent judiciary, and we need the judiciary and the judges to be protected.
Is that an issue in Tunisia as well?
Yes, it is right now an issue. We have, the judiciary has been under siege. We have had judges who, because they ruled against what the wish of the ruling majority is, they have been harassed, taken out of their position, and so on. And this happened not just with the current president, it happened in the past decade as well. So it's an issue. The judiciary are the white cells in your body. They are what actually neutralizes corruption. So if you have a corruption somewhere, you go to the courts and the court neutralizes that. They're the white cells of the body. So if the judiciary is under siege, that means this is a country with a weak immunity, right? And so the judges have to be protected. That means when they're appointed, it's not the president who decides whether they're removed from their post or not. Their living standards and their salary is not subject to what whoever is in power, the executive branch.
Whims and caprices of a particular leader.
Yes. You need the judiciary to be independent and to rule when their consciousness and the rule of law are the only key factors who, and of course their consciousness in front of God, because that's a big responsibility. That way, when they judge based on the merit on the case, and they can serve justice to the people and to everybody. That's a key process for
a while ago, you mentioned that you worked for the national airline, and that's Tunisia.
Yes.
How long ago was this, and how long did you stay there?
This was in 2021. I was appointed with the mandate to restructure the airline. So the national airline is going through a hard time. It's 8,000 employees, manages 7 airports. We have one of the largest penetration networks in Europe that coming from Africa. And it's going through a crisis. It's went through bankruptcy, almost bankruptcy. And it was going through a crisis, including with the unions and with inefficiencies and the lack of issues. So I was appointed at a moment where the airline was in crisis. Okay. And my mandate was to restructure it. I started restructuring it successfully. And when the success started showing up, the corrupt establishment had a hard time with that. And so I was not only fired, I was physically assaulted and threatened with jail for actually succeeding in restructuring the airline. And that was what made me decide to get into politics officially and found the Third Republic Party. And now I'm running.
Did you leave? When did you leave Tunisia?
I left March 2021.
Okay.
Yes.
So it was just a very short period.
Yes.
Months.
Yes, 3 months.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
And
a lot happened in those 3 months.
Like what? You said you were physically assaulted by who?
by some a group in the unions. So a lot have happened, including a 3-day strike, and the head of the national union at the time threatened to do an entire national strike unless I'm fired. You know, I was also threatened by jail with the finance minister, who actually told me, threatened me with jail in his office.
Why?
Because clearly, and I'm paraphrasing what he said at the time, he said, we're not here to save the airline, we're here to liquidate, to transfer the assets to a private family-owned airline and liquidate the rest, the liabilities. Okay. And I said, Mr. Minister, you know, that's conflict of interest, and I'm not going to betray the trust of the people on their public good. I am not doing that, and it's against the law, so I'm going to transfer the airline to the judiciary. And that's when he threatened me with jail. And so I've seen corruption inside the system, the political regime. I've seen it inside. I faced it, and it almost threatened my life and my freedom and everything. My country invested in me. It almost killed me. And so, because I survived with the help of God, but also with the support of the people, that the public opinion was very, very supportive. When I saw that the Tunisian people were on the good side and the right side of the cause, that's when I had this intuition that reform in the economy, reform in state-owned enterprise, including the airline, transparency, and the rule of law, this is a demand of the majority. Okay. And so that's when I made the bet on the Tunisian people. And I said, I'm going to found a party, and the party is a center-right, pro-economic freedom, pro-transparency party, which, by the way, Tunisia didn't have center-right parties for a very long time. So I said, I'm betting on that. I'm gonna create this party, and I'm gonna bet that the Tunisian people will go right. And going right means they're gonna be for reform, economic freedom, trade freedom, transparency, capitalism, you know. They're going to go in that direction, and that's the bet we're doing, and I still believe in that. And the honestly, Tunisians did not prove me wrong. The fact that the party exists.
Do you think 3 months was enough to garner enough experience to rule 12 million people?
Yeah. So, look, the experience is. Look, you can have somebody with 30 years of experience and they have poor judgment, and you can have somebody with 37-year-old. With a better judgment. So judgment and wisdom is not a factor that is only determined by age. Right? So that's number one. Then experience is not determined by length, it's determined by intensity. The intensity of my experience and my journey in life, having been trusted. Even in Tunisia, I've been trusted by the Tunisian military to be a teacher in the War College, National Institute of Defense, Naval Academy, and Staff College. So if the Tunisian military trusted my judgment and experience and what I can bring to teach them, and they're all older than me, I have to admit, you know, then if our Tunisian military trusted me, so I'm pretty sure, you know, they can trust me being their commander-in-chief. Now, I like your question because the question is, what does it take for somebody to govern a country with 12 million people going through this huge crisis? Yeah. Right. So here's what it takes, what I believe it takes. It takes somebody who does not judge anybody. It takes somebody who is for national reconciliation. It takes somebody who's willing to give up power. Take somebody, that's where we are right now, because all of the 3 branches of government were concentrated under the presidency. Yeah. So we need somebody who takes that and give it back. Because the only way we can take it back now is what happened in 2011, is through the streets. And the streets are not stable, and it's not good. People die in manifestations. You have martyrs. You have stores and private assets who get destroyed. You have a ripple effect that could hurt people all over the region, if not the world, you know? We're interconnected in the world right now, and we don't need another unstable country. And so what it takes is somebody to give up power.
You think Zayed will give up power?
he made a statement in last April where he said, for him, it's either he stays or it's death. So he made it a zero-sum game. Now, I tried to understand why did he say that. Is he a bad person? Does he really believe it? Is he afraid? I tried to understand him. Why would the president, sitting president, say, I stay or I die? And you know who said that? Gaddafi said that.
Yeah.
And look what Libya, where Libya ended. So then I realized in Tunisia's law, we have an article in the constitution that says the president is immune. We have immunity for the president. But then that's not recognized by courts and it's not recognized by the parliament because we don't have an organic law passed through parliament that translates that constitutional right. And so technically no president is immune in Tunisia. That's why the former president left in 2011, he left to Saudi Arabia, you know? We have a president right now, a former president who's living in Qatar or I think France or somewhere, who's been sentenced in Tunisia for jail. He goes back in Tunisia, he's going to jail. And so I have a sitting president right now. Who knows? If he's out of power, there is no safe way out. And you know, that's dangerous. And that's not good for the country. And we cannot continue with this process where if you're a president and you take risks and you make mistakes, you go to jail. And so your only bet is to try to stay in power, even if it means hurting the people and taking them down with you. And so that's one of the things I hope to work on, and I hope our country resolves, is to guarantee immunity to any sitting president, and let this one be the first one. And so, is he going to give up power? No. But we have to find a way where there is immunity.
Will you contest this age thing?
Yeah, we already did. We filed a lawsuit with the administrative court because it's illegal. Because
Parliament has not amended your laws.
No, the Parliament is, and Parliament will vote against the age limit change, by the way, because the majority are youth. You know, 52% of the voter base are below the age of 39. What kind of a country and what kind of a parliament would vote to exclude them from their own election? So no, we know that the majority are the youth, and therefore it's not going to change. So we know that the administrative court will rule in our favor. I mean, I trust that. I hope, of course, they won't be under a lot of pressure, which I'm pretty sure they are. But the idea is you know, if the opposition ends up choosing somebody else and it's the right person who would follow that agenda, immunity to the president, economic growth, renegotiation with Europe, and they get to have a majority, and they get a majority of Tunisians go out and vote, and therefore we have an election that is over 50% of the electorate went to the ballot box. It doesn't have to be me. If somebody else can do it, I'll support them. You know, if it's me, then I'm showing up.
How thoughting of you forming a coalition?
Many. I mean, we've done a national dialogue in last year, all of last year. And when I run on November 11th, by December 27th, I announced a national coalition government with over 5 parties in it. And the national coalition government guarantees a majority into the ballot. And that national coalition government kept going, and all the parties supported this. So I was the leader of the opposition until the moment, basically, the electoral committee and Said said, "We know what? You know, all of the opposition and all of your coalition get out of the ballot box and don't run." That coalition is still standing. It's still ongoing. We're going to keep fighting peacefully, and I hope we can resolve the situation. Again, I call for the election to be postponed until we resolve the situation, so that we don't end up with a formula for instability in Tunisia.
If it is not postponed, do you anticipate a low voter turnout?
Do I anticipate, sorry, what?
A low voter turnout.
Yes. Oh, I mean, the electoral committee even announced it. They said we're expecting a low voter turnout. So, you know, of course, when you have a minority only represented into the ballot, they don't want the majority to show up, right? They just want a minority. So I'm not even the one saying it. The electoral committee is actually the one that said we're going to have a low voter turnout. So And that's pretty bad for the country, of course, because we have had 2 free and fair, transparent elections in the past decade, 2014 and 2019.
Yeah.
And in both, the turnout in the first round, they were based on 2 rounds, the turnout in the first rounds exceeded 50%. And so it is a crime against the Tunisian people to create conditions and to game the system so that you do not have a majority and a high voter turnout. It's a crime against the Tunisian people at this point.
What does the future hold for you if you do not become the president of Tunisia?
God decides. I mean, look, democracy works, but I also believe that serving the people is no easy task, and you cannot do it without faith and without the help of God. I do believe that. And so, I'm pretty sure if that's not part of my future, that means somebody else is, meant for that. And that means God has decided it, and I'm useful somewhere else.
Okay, we
and
wish you all
I
the
will
best.
be useful anywhere I go. That's me.
Do you plan on coming to stay in Ghana?
I'm coming back for sure.
Okay.
Because now
You're welcome.
I am coming back for sure because now I mean, God bless this country. God bless you guys. God bless this country.
God bless our homeland,
God
Ghana.
bless the homeland Ghana. This is for me my second home in Africa. It's decided.
Okay.
So I'm coming back.
You're
sure.
welcome. We love you already. So that's Olfa Hamdi. She is the founder of the Third Republic Party in Tunisia. She was hoping to lead the people of Tunisia, but she's been disqualified. That's it for an exclusive interview. My name is Lily Mohammed. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.